Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Truth About Real Estate Investing show. My name is Rowan Cito, host and producer, and whatever else there is to this show. I am a four-time Realtor of the Year to investors. Been investing since 2005. We've done all right. We have a large number of successful clients. We have over 350 clients. We've helped them amass somewhere around $280 million worth of real estate. And among our clientele, we have about 45 or over 45 self-made millionaire real estate investor clients. So those are investments. That excludes their principal residences. And we have a special treat for you today in my new friend, Bruce Firestone. He's a second-generation commercial real estate investor developer. He's very super successful and extremely experienced. He's built thousands of homes, dozens of office buildings and shopping plazas. Bruce is best known for the founding of Ottawa's NHL franchise, the Ottawa Senators, our mortal enemies of Toronto fans. We're mortal enemies with everyone who's more successful than us, and yeah, whatever. He had to build their arena as well. He's former chairman and part owner of the CFL Ottawa, now called the Red Blacks. They were called the Rough Riders back then, which was kind of weird because we had two teams out of like 9 teams that were all called the Rough Riders. Anyways, he's kind of a legend in the Ottawa community. He's even a member of Ottawa's Sports Hall of Fame. Before we get to Bruce, what a fascinating real estate market to be a part of. It really depends on people's situation, if they bought right, if they have a lot of cash. It really depends on what situation they're in. Quick update, the entry-level vacant or owner-occupied properties, they make up the bulk of transactions these days. I think I mentioned last week, like my neighbor, I was visiting a friend of mine, like they're across the street neighbor. This was in Georgetown, Ontario, so it's north of Milton. I think it's technically part of the GTA. Anyways, they're across the street from them. Their neighbor was asking $1.6 million for a 4-bedroom house backing onto natural space, and it sold for $1.7 million. So it sold for $100,000 over asking in 30 days. So there's still a lot of business going on. So it's not dead for everyone. Tenanted properties these days are scaring away buyers. I'm hearing all of this from my own team, and I reached out to my old school investor specialist realtor friends in Barrie, Oshawa, and in downtown Toronto. Everyone's basically having the same experience that we are here at Owen Real Estate. Everyday buyer investors are taking the summer off. Investor sellers, there's more of them than ever. Excuse me. There's more listings than ever, even of quality turnkey properties. But if they are tenanted, they're likely sitting for now, unless they're priced appropriately. Unless they're the best deal out there, they're sitting. The market changes quickly, though, and also I'm talking about, like, I'm recording this August 18th, right? We're in the middle of the summer. Interest rates are high. They're likely to get higher. I'll touch on that in a second. The market changes quickly. And I'm anticipating a busy September, October. As investors return from vacation, they're going to see all the great deals available. Sellers who can't afford to hang on, they're going to be selling. But much depends on what the Bank of Canada does. The bond market anticipates right now, based on what the bond market is doing, they're anticipating a 29% chance that rates will be higher by 0.25% in September, and a 71% chance that the overnight interest rate by the Bank of Canada will be higher in December. So it's either going to come in September, or it's going to come in December, or a month after that. But the market overall does expect there to be rates to be higher, 0.25% higher than it is today. And then after that should be the peak, based on what the bond market's doing. Many are already feeling the pain, and they'll feel even more as rates go up. But I expect the rhetoric from the Bank of Canada to pivot, as they'll start saying, like, we're now expecting to pause. And they may even start alluding to the eventual rate cut, which is right now expected to be late 2024. And then once that happens, once the rhetoric changes, then you'll see more buyers enter the market. I've had conversations with some of our listing clients. Listing clients means like there are clients who have properties listed for sale. The conversations are around that if their plan is to sell, it really needs to happen this fall. It has to happen September, October, or else there's a chance that they're holding that property to the spring. So, Cherry and I are holding all of our rental properties, so we can hold. It's just whether or not other people can hold. The nice part about my clients' properties is that they're all houses, as in house. It's not a condo, and they're on land. They're not up in the sky. They're on land, and they are typically rented somewhere between $3,000 to $4,400 a month. Some are plus utilities, so they generate significantly more rent than a single-family home would, or let alone a condo, and that really helps cash flow and weathering this storm. On the flip side, for those who were of the more pre-construction persuasion, it's just brutal out there. Prices are down 20% or more, depending on where, depending on what. Some buyers are fire selling, giving up their deposits, which could be 15 to 20%, or they're even returning their units to the builder and giving out and foregoing also the deposit, which could be 15, 20%. The builders then in turn can go sell that property to the open market. I literally have a friend that shared it with me the other day. That's exactly what they did. They bought a property directly from the builder for pretty much what the previous buyer walked away from, less about 20%. So so this is really bad news for anyone who's trying to sell via the assignment market. As FYI, they are competing with the builder, and it's already bad enough to be competing with the number of assignment sellers out there. Investing in real estate is tough enough when researched and done professionally with skill and sufficient capital. But when folks skip steps or they're not educated properly, they take their eye off cash flow and speculate. That worked. That worked for a really long time, like since the early 90s, but not in today's market. Many who invested in single-family homes between the years 2020 and 2022, they're really hurting. If they never properly researched what highest and best use strategies were, or how to actually find ROI and balancing cash flow in markets that are more affordable, where you actually can find cash flow using strategies that cash flow, well, they're feeling the pain right now. What's sad is that many of them made mistakes. Unfortunately, they got really bad advice from watching television or false influencers and condo salespeople. Condo salespeople, they're doing their job. Their job's to sell condos. So you have to understand what their motivations are. And there's a lot of novice coaches out there. I think it's difficult to call yourself a real estate coach when you have less than 2 years experience as an investor yourself and having no previous coaching client experience. Anyways, I hope for you, my 17 listeners, that you're getting educated and networking with actual successful real estate investors. So if you're looking for great quality and great value, I am biased, obviously, but our online IWIN meetings and our in-person inside the property IWIN mastermind tours are simply outstanding. That's the feedback we continue to get. That's why they're all trafficked quite heavily. We get hundreds of people register for our our IWIN meetings, which are all online, and our in-person tours. They all sell out. They always sell out. At our Tuesday, September 19th meeting, which is a virtual IWIN meeting, my team and I will be sharing the latest in the market from a high level, from a macroeconomic level, and also at a street level update with sale prices for specifically to properties that we target for investment purposes, what kind of renovation budgets we're seeing, the rents that we're getting, and also, of course, the best neighborhoods to invest in. And these just happen to be, and we get all this information from working with our clients. Plus, we have a special guest in one of the larger developers in Ontario. Cherry and I invest in their projects directly, and we've been provided exceptional passive returns. So you don't want to miss this. The following Saturday, September 23rd, we will be hosting the IWIN Mastermind Tour in the Niagara region. Niagara region, in my opinion, has big upside thanks to the recent correction. New investment in a hospital. It's supposed to open up pretty soon, I think. And the government there currently is not investor friendly. But when they do pivot, as they'll need to do, because we're currently in a housing crisis, I'm willing to bet that we're going to have different leadership at the federal level in probably about 2 years' time. And so you'll see a lot more pressure coming from higher levels of government on municipalities to be more investor friendly, because we're in a housing crisis. So allow the private market to do something about it. And when they do pivot, you'll see a whole flood of investment. But as a sophisticated investor should do, you should get ahead of the rush. At least get ahead on the education part. Not do what everyone else is doing. If you wanted to do what everyone else was doing, maybe buying pre-construction condos and mutual funds and not getting rich. To register, if you're receiving my emails, you are good to go. You will be informed of when we have events, when we announce new podcast episodes, when we have new deals available. If you're not receiving my emails, then you're missing out on over 10,000 plus of the I-winningest investors are doing out there in Canada, because they'll have an information advantage by being on my email list. If you would like to become, to have a better information advantage, simply go to www.truthaboutrealestateinvesting.ca. Again, that's www.truthaboutrealestateinvesting.ca. Add your name and email address on the right side and you're good to go. Information is power. Information we shared with our 45 plus something self-made real estate millionaire investor clients is even better. I hope to see you at a future event. On a personal investing front, I'm often asked, what are we currently buying during this housing market correction? The answer is sadly nothing. We're holding our residential rental properties. We're happy with our portfolio, the size that it is, and we've actually got our capital and our time and our bandwidth kind of tied up as we bought a new business, which is an accounting practice. It's sort of based out of Ottawa, but they actually have no physical office. The owners are located in Ottawa, but all the staff and the accountants, they all work virtually across Canada. We closed on the deal about a month ago. Cherry is, as you can imagine, really busy with the transition, while I'm being that supportive husband in the background, running around, driving the kids to their camps and extracurricular activities. I'll share more about the new business that cost us more than our house. Hence, you can appreciate why I can't get my fourplex. I'd love to still be able to buy that fourplex, but when the decision came down to fourplex or buying a new business, well, you can guess who won. On to this week's show. The Ottawa Senators recently dominated the hockey headlines, as has been reported. They sold for around $1 billion US dollars. So sold for over $1 billion Canadian. That's safe to say. While Bruce Firestone is no longer the owner of the Ottawa Senators, I'm sure he's proud of what he started. That has since ballooned into a massive financial commercial success. Imagine if the Sens had kept a future Hall of Famer defenseman Zdeno Chara. For all you Leaf fans know exactly who he is because he beat the crap out of us every time we were in the playoffs. But anyways, if the Sens had kept them, they probably would have hoisted the Stanley Cup by now, and well before the Leafs. But I digress. As I mentioned before, Bruce has built thousands of homes, dozens of commercial plazas and office buildings. For fun and to give back to the community, Bruce was the entrepreneur in residence at the University of Ottawa's Business School, Telfer School of Management. Per his Wikipedia, Bruce has a Wikipedia profile, unlike almost all my other guests. Bruce was a university professor, and he does have his master's in engineering and PhD in urban economics. Bruce now focuses more on coaching real estate investors these days, as he finds the work really rewarding. So he's here today to share the journey of his own super successful career. He has some tips on how to be a successful leader, CEO, how he overcame much opposition to build an NHL Arena on farmland, what his everyday investor coaching clients are doing to create extra cash flow in their portfolios. There's one particular commercial industrial land co-sharing garden shed workshop strategy that is particularly fascinating. Understand all those words fit into one property. Pay particular attention to the part where attention to that investment strategy that I just mentioned, as the property is actually now for sale for several millions of dollars. So from startup blue collar investor, now he's going to be a multimillionaire. To connect with Bruce, you can find his information on his website, brucemfirestone.com. Please enjoy the show. Hello, Bruce. What's keeping you busy these days?
Well, Erwin, I'm so glad to be on your show, and I've heard so much about you. And when I got to know you a little bit, I realized how much you've accomplished in such a short period of time. These days, I'm focused mostly on coaching and consulting work. I coach about 2,500 people in the States and Canada, a few overseas, but mostly in the States and Canada. And I got into it about a decade ago, and I'll tell you a little story. Uh, my dad, before he passed away, everyone said, people should never retire. What are you going to do? Sit around and watch TV all day? That would be terrible. And I hate golf. So I'm not going to golf. I'm definitely not going to golf. And so I was getting ready to retire from the University of Ottawa, where I was the entrepreneur in residence. I was turning 60. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do next. So I actually hired a life coach, and she was fantastic. I worked with her for a number of months. And towards the end of that period, as she got to know me better, she said, Bruce, I think you'd make a good coach. You built thousands of homes, dozens of office buildings and shopping plazas. I built an arena, where the kid called the Canadian Tire Center, where the Ottawa Senators play. I've got some education and background in real estate. And, so she said, why don't you do real estate investment and business coaching? I went, oh, I kind of like that idea, for the third act of my life. And when I hear a good idea, Erwin, whether it's mine or not, doesn't matter. Within a day or two, I probably had a primitive website up. And I had, Bruce Firestone, real estate investment and business coach, call me if you email me, reach out to me if you need some help. And about 2,500 people I've
Oh my
coached
God.
over the last decade, not all one-on-one, but some of it's one-on-one, one-on-two, some, times groups of 20, 40, 50, 60, 70, that kind of number. And I've super, super enjoyed it. And when I got into the coaching thing, Erwin, I was wondering where I could make a contribution. If you have a real estate portfolio and you're thinking about reducing costs somehow, I don't know, improving insulation, reducing your energy costs, I wouldn't be the right coach for that.
Right,
So what I
right.
did instead was I said, I'm going to focus on the revenue side of this business, because not a whole lot has been done on the revenue side of the business, in terms of real estate anyway, in the last 30 years or maybe longer. So I've been focused very heavily for a decade doing research and work and experimenting with what I call animation. Not Disney animation, but animation, which is adding new revenue streams to real estate projects, new and old. And it's been a tremendous ride. And we've changed cap rates and we moved them up, and we've changed lives. And I'll give you a quick example, if I may.
Please, yes.
All right. So my wife and I own a triplex. We own some real estate, and one of them is a triplex. And this young woman, her name is Maya, came to see me, and she wanted to rent an apartment. She was a single mom. She's a yoga instructor, and she had one child, a lovely young woman in her mid-30s, I think. And when I looked at her earnings, she was making about $42,000 a year as a yoga instructor back then. And I said to her, Maya, it's just not enough money. Half of your earnings are going to go in rent. You still have to pay for food and for clothing and whatever else you need for your kid. So I said, I probably can't rent anything to you. It's just, I wouldn't be doing you a favor. And then I thought about it for another few seconds, and I said, Maya, do you want to come in the backyard with me? There's something I want to show you. And she said, sure. So we go in the backyard, and we had this about 850 square foot detached garage in the backyard. And it was quite nice. It was big. It had high ceilings. It was insulated. It had electricity. It had heat. And I said to her, after we went through it, I said, Maya, do you think you could run your own yoga studio? And she said, I don't know. I said, you probably would make more money doing that than just working for somebody else. What my students call a job. They don't call it a job. They call it journey of the broke. And yeah, I learned that from my students. And so I said, well, maybe you could consider that. And then if you were making decent money, then maybe you could afford to pay more rent. So what I did was we rented her the workshop, and she set up her own yoga studio. This would have been 2017, so about 6 years ago now. And sure enough, the next year, she cleared over $100,000, which is a big change in her personal circumstances. So we rented the workshop to her and an apartment. It was a one-bedroom apartment, but still. And so Mr. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, right? He says your house is or your apartment is a liability because it takes money out of your jeans, and your job or whatever you have, a duplex or whatever it might be in real estate terms, is an investment because hopefully it puts some money in your jeans. But if you think about it, Maya had a workshop, which was the asset, and she had the apartment, which is the liability. You put those two together in a live work condition. Then I said, "Oh, this is great." And then I because I've got my real estate license, so I'm armed and dangerous. I realized you can search MLS in Canada, the United States, for detached garages. So a lot of my clients, the people I'm coaching now, they're looking for properties that already have or can have a detached garage in the back. And they're doing this live work condition, which is very popular. And I don't have to tell you, Erwin, or any of your listeners or viewers, that there's been an explosion in side hustles. I think millions, maybe even tens of millions of people in the States and in Canada have side hustles. And so if you could provide kind of a live work situation, that's a powerful combination. That's a form of animation. And it also happens to drive our cap rate up a little bit.
I can't agree with you more. Our own clients are we're feverishly looking for detached 2-car garages with a healthy parking pad underneath it, because we're converting them into apartments.
Yeah, you've got it then. I mean, you don't need any coaching from me.
But what's interesting is you like bring decades of real estate experience on enormous scales. I can't even wrap my head around building a hockey arena meant for at NHL standards. That's
it was easier than you might think.
Okay, sure.
Because even back then, this is now 25 or 30 years ago, even back then, or when I was thinking about animation, and we did some things with the Canadian Tire Center. Back then it was called the Palladium. But if you've got $5 or $6 million a year, we'll change it to, the Zato Arena. If you want to name it. But back then when we were designing the Palladium, what we did was we wanted to really optimize the revenue potential. So we did some things that really made a difference. And I'll give you some examples. What we did with the building was we took the Canadian Tire Center, the Palladium, and we put half of it in the ground. So when you walk up to the Palladium, it's more human scale. So from an architectural point of view and from an urban form point of view, it's kind of a little bit more human scale. But that means that it's not like Rocky, if you remember Rocky running up the steps, right? Or at the Philadelphia Spectrum back in the day, where you have to go up, 50 steps or more to reach the front door. You can put the front door basically at grade. You can roll right in. By doing that, Erwin, you have what's called a double loaded condition, which means you can have stores that face the inside, restaurants, merchandise, bars, nightclubs, whatever, that face the inside. So when the arena is live, people on the inside can approach that store. But on the days when it's dark, they have doors to the outside, a window in the world, so to speak. And so they have far, far more volume, right? So the retail operations are all around the Canadian Tire Center at grade. They're double loaded. And so they're busy not just when there's a game on or a concert, they're busy also, I guess all the time that they're open. So, that was sort of one thing. And I think we were one of the first arenas maybe to do that in the world. Maybe we were the first. I'm not sure, but we were among the first. And we did some other very simple things. Like, for example, I talked to our architect. His name was Gino Rossetti, who had done the Palace of Auburn Hills in Detroit for the Detroit Pistons. And I talked to him about architectural signage. And what I mean by that is I wanted Gino, because he was a genius. I mean, he was brilliant. I asked him, where do we put signs? And so you want like if you have a score clock, you put a sign next to it, right? So it draws the eye. And I remember getting a call a few years after the Palladium opened from Tony Tavares, who was running what was then called the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim. And we all get NHL reports and we share them amongst the owners and staff. And Tony calls me up and says, how is it possible that the little Ottawa Senators in a small town like Ottawa, are outperforming the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim in probably the richest county in the United States, Orange County. And, we were outperforming them in many ways, and signage was one of them. So I said, look, Tony, why don't you send your crew up here and spend a few weeks with us, and we'll show you what we've done. And we did some other things, too, which I can claim no credit for whatsoever. But Gino Rossetti was walking around on his first assignment to build an arena or stadium. He had not done that before, and this was with the owners of the Detroit Pistons. And he went to the Joe Louis Arena in Detroit, and he looks up and he sees, those suites, the private suites that you see in so many stadiums today. Well, he says, why are the people who are paying the most money the furthest away from the ice or the court? And the owners of the Pistons said, well, I don't know. That's always the way it's been done. And the reason they hired, you'll like this, I think, Erwin, you like new stuff. The reason they hired Gino was because he had never designed an arena or stadium before. They didn't want to go to people who had already done it, because then they would get what was already done. The owners wanted something different.
Yeah.
So
well, fresh set of eyes. Yeah, someone with no context, someone no biases. Yeah,
exactly. So what Gino did was he immediately pulled out his sketchbook, and great architects carry sketchbooks with them everywhere. I mean, yes, computers and tablets and everything else is fantastic, but the sketchbook is still a really important part of what, say, somebody like Mr. Rossetti would do. He pulls out his sketchbook and he says, what if we had a ring of suites 12 rows from the court or the ice, and another row, maybe 24, 26 seats up from the ice, and a final row at the top? And what he did with that was he completely reinvented the stadium and the arena design business, because what we did, for example, here in Ottawa, is we had 142 private suites that we leased to 142 different companies, Royal Bank of Canada, Bell Canada. I mean, the people who have resources, and, they would pay, I don't know, $200,000 a year plus food and beverage and everything else, but they would have a lease of $200,000 a year, say. And if you multiply that, I got to use my calculator.
That's a lot of money.
If you multiply 142 times 200 times 10 years, those were the 10-year leases, it means you have like $284 million in committed monthly recurring revenues. CMRR is the holy grail of any business: technology, service, real estate, doesn't matter. Committed monthly recurring revenues. So if you have $284 million of committed revenues just from those suites, you can finance a lot of building.
I see. Got it. So if you could demonstrate that you could generate so much revenue, then you then improve your financing.
Exactly. It's much easier to go to a lender and say, well, yeah, by the way, you're not really financing Bruce. My credit score, maybe it's 700 or 800. I don't know. You're financing the Royal Bank of Canada, Bell Canada, and a bunch of other companies, Rogers Communication. And, and they go, oh, this is great. Where do we get, can we give you the check now?
Was that what it was like? It was that easy to get money?
No, I'm not being completely truthful here.
Because the show is about truths about real estate investing, and a consistent message from developers. Like, you have an extensive development experience. Consistent message right here from developers, and you even see in the media is how expensive it is to develop here versus in the States, for example.
100%.
And you resist. And I read in your Wikipedia that you face significant resistance just to build the arena.
Yeah. At first point, I mean, we'll talk about the arena in a second, but I'll give you an example. One of the young men I coach it wasn't Florida, it was North Carolina. In North Carolina, had to do a rezoning to get one of his projects unlocked. And he went to the town. This is in North Carolina, and he calls me up and said, "Look, I'm here at the town, and they want me to file an application." And I said, "I hear you." I think it was a Zoom call, and I said, in Canada, most cities and towns, when you apply for a rezoning, it can take 1 or 2 years. It can cost several $100,000 to do a rezoning when you add up all the studies and fees. What are you facing down there? He said, $500 and it will take 6 weeks.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Did you want a box for life? What happened?
No, I mean, so what I'm getting at is in many parts of the United States, not all. I mean, there are towns where it's very, very tough to do a project. Portland, Seattle, Boston. I mean, there's towns that have just a process just as bad as we have in most cities in Canada. But there are many, many, many towns in the United States where you file a minimal fee. The town does most of the work themselves. The planners do it. They show up in front of council. It's a very informal kind of process, and they approve your project a few weeks after you've applied. Here in Canada, projects can take a decade to get through the process. And if you want to know why we're not producing enough affordable housing, not enough industrial space, that's why.
How like how what would, okay, let's go to the arena for as an example. Like how long did it take from the beginning of the process to actually shovels getting in the ground?
So we bought the site. We bought 600 acres of land in Canada, which is the west end of Ottawa, and we needed about 100 acres for the building itself. And we applied for a rezoning, and it was approved by the city of Canada, which doesn't exist anymore. It's now just Ottawa. But it was approved by the city of Ottawa and the regional municipality of Ottawa Carleton in votes, I think, about 25-1. I think there was one councillor who was not in favor, but the rest were. So it was quite a strong vote. And I met with the premier of the province of Ontario at the time. His name was David Peterson. He was a Liberal premier. I don't belong to any political party. I never have. So I met with Mr. Peterson, and I asked him for three things. One, I said, we have to build a new interchange, Mr. Peterson, on the major highway in Ottawa, which is called the Queensway, or the Highway 417. And I said that'll be about a $35 million cost. I think that's something that the province should do, because the day after the interchange is completed, whoever builds it, they have to give it to the province. So I can't finance that, right? It'd be like me putting a mortgage on your house, or when you probably wouldn't be too happy with me. So he said, well, okay, that's one. What's number two? I said, number two is we're going to go down to Palm Beach in December. This is December of 1990. And we're going to tell the NHL all kinds of great things about me and about the city of Ottawa and how much we love hockey and about the province of Ontario. And Mr. Premier, I'd like you to come with us. I said, okay. He said, I'm not going to agree to anything until I hear all three of your requests. I said, now I understand. So the first one was the interchange. The second one was come down to Palm Beach. And in December, Palm Beach has better weather than Ottawa or Toronto. So I thought he might enjoy that, and we would use his company in the presentation. The third thing I asked him is, I said, we expect to go through the process. Like in Ontario, you go through a municipal process, but then there's the provincial process as well, which is separate and different. Or can be. And I said, I'm not asking for any shortcuts at all. We'll do all the studies that are required, and we'll go through all the hoops. I am just asking the government of Ontario and the various ministries to give it a priority. I said, the Palladium is Ottawa Carleton, Ottawa's sort of Honda motor car plant. It means as much to Ottawa as, getting a new automotive plant in southern Ontario. I mean, it's important for us, and I think for our community. But those are the three asks. And right away, David was, he never smoked in public, but he was smoking in his office, right? And he was smoking his cigarettes, and he said, "Yeah, you got a deal." And so that was great. And one of my attorneys was there with me, Terry Dennison. We took a note and we exchanged notes. Then what happened was, I think in the fall of 1990, Mr. Peterson called an election 2.5 years early.
Oh boy.
No premier has ever done that before. And I can tell you, if the province of Ontario lasts another 200 years, nobody will ever do it again.
So sorry, so a year and a half into his term, he called an election?
He did. And 2.5 years early. And the people of Ontario punished him and his party. They were very high in the polls, but as soon as he called the election, they dropped like a stone. And the NDP under Mr. Ray, Bob Ray, came to power. I think they had 34% of the votes. So between the NDP, the Liberals, and the Conservatives, it broke down perfectly so that the NDP could become the first and maybe the only time the government of Ontario. And so Mr. Ray had, I don't know, 9, 10, 11 MPPs from the Hamilton Wentworth area. And when we applied for a franchise, there were a bunch of cities competing: Ottawa, Tampa,
Yeah.
Hamilton, Milwaukee, Seattle, Portland, Houston.
For an NHL franchise, yes.
Yeah. The two that were successful was Tampa and Ottawa, but Hamilton was one of them applying. And so Mr. Ray met with his Hamilton caucus. What can I do for you? Because he had one MPP, one lonely MPP in Ottawa, and like 9 or 10 or 11 in Hamilton. And they said, put a spoke in the wheels, of the Ottawa franchise, and oppose the construction of the Palladium. So that's what happened. And so we went through a 13-and-a-half-week Ontario Municipal Board hearing against our own provincial government. When the franchises were granted to Firestone and Ottawa and Phil Esposito and Tampa, I remember getting a call from Phil Esposito. He's a famous Hall of Famer in the National Hockey League. And he said, Bruce, you got to hear how I came back to Tampa. I got a call from the governor of the state of Florida congratulating us. What can we do to help make a new arena happen and all this cool stuff? He said, how was your reception? I said, not quite the same, Phil. We got a lawsuit from our government. There you go.
Because that really accelerated Hamilton's ability to get an NHL franchise.
Not at all. Not in the slightest. What is really, really ironic about it is we did go through a 13-and-a-half-week hearing. I was on the stand being cross-examined for 3.5 grueling days. I wouldn't want to do it at this age, but I was much younger then, of course. And what's really ironic about it is I am a great supporter of having 9 NHL teams, Canadian teams in the NHL. I would like to see a team in Hamilton. I'd like to see one return to Quebec City. And I've been a supporter for 30 years. And it's much, much smarter, I thought, for Mr. Ray and for Ron Joyce, who was representing Hamilton, to build bridges to me because I'm inside the tent, if you understand what I mean. Let's say you had a private golf course and I wanted to be a member. If I knew somebody that was close to you, and he or she spoke highly of me, maybe you would consider me as a member, right?
Yeah. But that's not what raises all ships, right?
I would think so. So I just thought it was very petty and cost us millions of dollars of legal fees and planning fees, millions.
And you're able to laugh about it now, huh?
Well, it's 30 years ago now. What are you going to do? If you're going to be an entrepreneur, and you are, and you would know this, you have to have a short memory.
So I don't know how to ask this, but the Ottawa Senators are in the news a lot lately. Like Ryan Reynolds was part of the bid process. A lot of other celebrities were part of bid processes.
Yeah. Snoop Dogg.
What can you imagine? What can you comment on? We were discussing before we were recording. It recently sold for just over $1 billion. Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it sold.
You exited quite a few years ago.
Yeah. Well, I actually did a little spreadsheet. We bought our franchise for $50 million and we paid for it in 1991, and it went to about $1 billion this year in 2023. So that's about a 10% compounded interest over that time. And 10% is compounded is a pretty good number. What Albert Einstein said about compound interest, right? It's the most powerful force of the universe. I don't know if that's true, but it's powerful. Mm-hmm. So it went from 50 million to $1 billion. And, in professional sports franchises, $1 billion is considered a starter franchise. Like the Washington Commanders just sold in the NFL. Just sold for $6 or a little over $6 billion. I mean, so $1 billion is a starter franchise. It's like training wheels.
I don't know if it would have been the most fun journey either. I have a Leafs fan, so it's painful. I can't imagine what it was like for you.
Oh, wait a second. If you're a Leafs fan, I can help you out with that. When was the last time the Leafs won a Stanley Cup?
It's what was it, the 40s,
Oh,
60s?
1967.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
When
before I
was
was
the last?
born. Yeah,
Wait a second. When was the last time the Ottawa Senators won a Stanley Cup?
I know. Yeah, it's
1927.
mm,
So when Leaf fans, and I sympathize with them, I'm not kidding. Toronto has the best fans, in my opinion, in the league. I love Ottawa fans; they're great, but Toronto fans are with their team. They travel with their team. They back that team. They bleed blue. They don't have red, in their veins. They bleed blue. One of my son-in-laws is a passionate Maple Leaf fan, and we're rivaling with my granddaughter whether she wears a Sens hat or a Leafs hat. But all kidding aside, Ottawa fans have waited even longer.
so. What can you comment on what you thought about the sale? Was it worth it?
I think it's excellent. One of the things that I've said many times, I don't know Michael Andlauer, who is the prospective new owner personally, but I know many people who have talked to him and know him well, and they speak very, very highly of him. And there are only probably three responsibilities that an owner really has. The first one is to set goals. The new owner of the Las Vegas Golden Knights said that he would want his team to challenge and win a Stanley Cup within 6 years. And they won the Stanley Cup this year in their sixth year. He set that goal. When I acquired the expansion franchise, the Sens, um, I set goals. The first year I wanted to get 22 or more points. That's not very many points. But the reason I set it at 22, and we ended up with 24, is because the worst ever team was the Washington Capitals, I think in early 70s anyway, who got 21. I didn't want to be the worst ever team, and we got 24, so we avoided that. The other thing is, I said we would make the playoffs within 5 years, and in our fifth year, we did. And I said we will challenge for a Stanley Cup in 7 to 12 years, which we did. We got to the finals, and we challenged for the cup. Unfortunately, we did not win it.
That was a
But
great team you had. I
it was a
remember
wonderful team.
that was
They
a
had a
great
couple of
team.
opportunities, I thought, to
Yeah.
to win, and unfortunately, they were unable to do it. So setting goals, I mean, whether you're the CEO of, I don't know, Facebook or Google or whatever, set goals is very important. So that's the number one job. Number two is to have a very, very close relationship with the fans. Not just with the fans, but the business community, the sponsors, the political community. And by political, I mean the small p political community. So that is a very, very important function. And I'm sure Michael will have an excellent relationship with the fans and the greater community. Because the living, beating heart of an owner in the building every day or almost every day is very, very important. All right. So that relationship is crucial. And the other thing, which certainly the Golden Knights have demonstrated abundantly clearly, is to have little or no tolerance for poor performance. Um, this is a cutthroat business when it comes to competing on the ice. Off the ice, the owners of major league sports teams, most of them, cooperate very, very, very well with each other, whether it's off the ice or off the court, off the pitch, off the field. But when it comes to competition on the field, every owner will lie to you. He'll say, "Oh yeah, you ought to take Irwin off my hands. We're giving him to you, even though he's got one leg.
Yeah,
He's going to be your best player."
yeah. I saw
They'll,
Moneyball. I saw
yeah, okay,
Moneyball
you know what?
with
Yeah.
For listener,
Oh,
Brad
no,
Pitt's movie.
Brad Pitt.
One,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it was great. So, but off the ice they will cooperate. But the Golden Knights and American owners generally are tougher. Americans generally are tougher in technology and in real estate and banking and services. They're tough businessmen and tough businesswomen. They are no nonsense. They will not accept poor performance. In Canada, we tend to be a kinder, gentler version of our American cousins. And that might serve you quite well in some respects, but in professional sports, not so much.
So sorry. Was number three? Sorry, just wanted to finish off. Number three was little tolerance for You mentioned there's three responsibilities for an owner.
Right. The third one was very little tolerance, if not
Got it.
zero tolerance for poor performance, whether it's a coach or general manager, a trainer, a ticket taker, somebody serving you the beer, a player. I mean, there's no loyalty at all. They want performance and they want it now.
So as you were talking about the three responsibilities, I was actually already into the real estate world. Would you
Sure.
say these responsibilities are in your real estate world in terms of your brokerage, your portfolio, your developments? I'm guessing it's something similar.
Well, the real estate world today is very, very difficult. I mean, we're going through a time where interest rates have doubled or even tripled, where we're coming through a pandemic where lumber prices, I think, doubled or tripled. Um, Supply chains were disrupted. I'm doing a little bit of development manager work, basically for friends of mine and to keep me busy. I'm helping a local veterinarian build a small 5,400 square foot clinic on property he already owns. And we're into the third year now trying to get our site plan approval. So
That's
unfortunately,
really big.
it's really,
For a
it's
vet?
I won't bore you with all the details because we'd be here for a couple of hours. But Erwin, it just you know what a critical path schedule is, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, you cannot build a critical path schedule when on the construction side your supply chain is bunged up. You just
Yeah,
can't.
yeah.
I mean, we've got a number of buildings my wife and I are developing, a couple downtown, and you can't get your HVAC system functioning
Right, right, right,
because you're waiting for deliveries from China
right, right.
or the United States, and they say, yeah, it'll be there in 6 weeks, and then 3 months later you're still waiting. What are you going to
Hmm.
do? You
Hmm.
can't open your building without
Yeah.
having your heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system. So,
Oh, sorry, Bruce. Just to pause you there. Failures as a critical path was actually what caused people in our community to go bankrupt. Like for example, like flippers, right? They couldn't
100%.
they couldn't finish on time for whatever reason, labor like not being there, materials not showing up on time, and then they ran out of cash. And then yeah,
100%. And I've had many, many, many people ask me to coach them to become flippers, and I refuse. That I will not do because everybody flips until they flop, and almost everybody fails. So I'm not interested in that at all. That's not a model that I think has
right.
legs.
I,
But
I
anyway,
think I think the
so
general thing is like there, in your experience, you have extensive experience. Is there fast money in real estate? Because that's what people want. That's what people see on HGTV, and it's like, oh, I want to be a flipper. Like you
oh
have
my
no
gosh,
context for this.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Erwin. What you see on HGTV is wall to wall BS. It is wall to wall BS. I know some of the people who do those shows, and they leave out, for example, the fact that most of the crew are not paid to do that show. And if you and I are doing a project, we're going to pay our labor.
They
And
won't do it for us for
they're not
free.
going to do it for me. Maybe for you because you're such a
Yeah.
star. But they won't do it for me. And the other thing is, many of the materials are donated. It's like if you wear a suit on a sports cast, you get a little bit of you get a bit of a commercial from it. But so when they say that these guys bought it for $750,000, they put $75,000 in, it's now valued at $950. They left out $200,000 of costs.
Yeah, yeah.
And also, they show that they did it in 5 weeks. Well, certainly during the pandemic, and even now, even the most minor renovations taking 5 months, if not 9 months or longer. We did, like I said, we brought one historic building back that had fallen on hard times. It was not a big building, 3 stories. It was supposed to take a year and a half, and it was about a $2.5 million budget for the reno. Well, we're now close to 2.5 years into it, and we're like at least $1.5 million over budget. So it is what it is, right? It's becoming very difficult. And going back to your statement about how difficult it is to build not only on time but also on budget, certainly in Ontario, certainly Eastern Ontario, it is now costing $600 a square foot to put up a 30 or 40-story concrete multi-res tower. And when you do the economics and the cap rate, it just isn't working. It comes out maybe you break 4%, maybe. And if your interest rates are if your interest rates are 6, 7, or 8%, forget it. You're going to lose money, gobs of it. So don't do that.
Right. And which is what leads us to the conundrum that we're in. Like builders have stopped while we
Stopped.
continue to grow in terms of population.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So what I'm doing is a
Oh,
little bit
sorry,
different.
sorry, Bruce. Again, because as a guest, you have a lot of context. Like you're a second generation investor per your bio. I don't know how accurate it is. You can't believe everything you read on the internet.
Yeah,
But have you ever seen it as challenging in real estate in your
I knew
extensive
you were going to
career?
ask me that. I did a little walk before we did this, just to clear my head, and I said, I bet you Irwin asks me that. So I got a story for you on that
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
All right.
All right.
All right. So my daughter, I've got 5 kids, and one of my daughters bought. I helped her. Bought a half double. Okay, she paid $345,000 for this nice half double.
Sorry,
And
can you explain what a half double is?
oh yeah, so you've got a house and it's got two halves. You know how a duplex is usually like this?
Hmm.
This is a house that's split down the middle into two.
Got it. Got it.
Kind
Got
of
it.
like
Side by side.
townhouses, but it's really a house that's split into two. So she
Okay.
bought half the half double.
Okay. Okay.
And she paid $345,000 for it. It was a 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath, single car garage, half double. And when I walked onto the site with Miriam, that's her name, I said, Miriam, this is the one you're going to buy. And she said, why this one, Dad? Because we'd looked at a number together. And guess when you walk down around the back, the ground sloped away, and down at the back there was an existing big window and a door. It was a walkout condition. You know what that is, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I said, I mean, it was just a basement. There was nothing there. But I said, Miriam, you're going to buy this because you're going to have the house up here and you're going to have a 1 bedroom apartment down here
All
with a
right.
walkout condition.
Sorry,
So
Bruce. Did the door already exist for the walkout?
the door already exists,
Okay. Okay. So you had a
and the
walkout
window,
basement. Got it.
it was a walkout basement condition. I said, this is the one you're going to buy, Miriam. So she did. She put in $5,000 and the bank of mom and dad put in 120,000.
Good
But she's
deal.
cute
Yeah.
and she puts her hands on her little hips and she says to me, yeah, but it's still 50-50, right, Dad? And I said to her,
She must be American. Tough negotiator.
she's a tough negotiator. I'm going to get into trouble, but I said, Miriam, that's girl arithmetic. And she burst out laughing. And I
Yeah.
said, don't worry about that. I said, we're joint tenants. We show up as owners, as joint tenants, which means that after I pass away and her mother passes away, we're simply deleted from land titles. You're going to end up owning 100% of it. So
Hmm.
don't worry
Hmm.
about that. Oh, she said, I'll own 100% of it. I said, yes, you will, honey. Yes, it will. I don't lend money to my children. You know, that I don't want to have a commercial relationship with my kids. So anyway, what happened was, so she bought it, and for another $80,000, we put in a 1 bedroom apartment, and she rents that for some amount of money. So she and her husband and their 2 children are able to live in her own house after paying for everything, including mortgage and internet and utilities, for about $600 or $700 a month after taking into account the rent. Now that's a pretty good deal. So in 2022, so last year, she gets it appraised at $807,000, up from the original price, which was 345. So she calls me and said, Dad, let's sell it. Let's sell it. I said, what? I mean, in 5 or 6 years, it's gone up from whatever to whatever. I said, why would you sell it? I mean, can you imagine when you're my age, what it will be worth? And when you're a young woman, she can't ever imagine being 71. That's too hard to imagine. But I said, one day you will be. And as long as I'm on title and as long as I'm alive, you're not selling. Well, what happened this year is the appraised value of her home dropped by 10%. So it's now valued, I think, at around 735. So it's down. So now she's upset. But wait, she gets her mortgage renewal after like 5 years, which was like 2.9% or something like that. They want over 6%. Now she calls me up, crying on the phone. And I said, Miriam, there are many reasons to cry in this life. There are. There are tough times, but this is not one of them. You have 2 beautiful children, a husband you love. You have a lot to be thankful for. The fact that your mortgage rate just doubled is not a reason to cry. We got to figure out how to do it. And she said, well, I guess we'll have to sell it that. I said, wait a second. Did your dad teach you to buy high and sell low? No, that we're not doing that. And I tell this to all the people I coach. This is a story that's going to it's going to grow and change, I'm sure, over the years. But I said, what we'll do is we'll change the amortization rate. She had, or period. She had, I think, a 17 or 18-year amortization. She wanted to pay it off fast. We extended that to 30 years to reduce her payments. And we renewed for 3 years at 6% or whatever, because she's just going to have to grin and bear it. And then the other thing that happened was the basement apartment became vacant, and she was able to raise the rent from $1,200 to $1,600 a month. In addition to that, she picked up a few more hours at work. So she had a little bit more revenue coming in. She spread out her payments a little bit more, and she raised the rent. And that's what people are doing, because everybody in real estate right now is in a box. And we have to hunker down. And you asked a great question. I'm 71 years of age. This is the toughest I've ever seen. And I've been through the recessions in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, 2008, 2009. This is much more difficult. I understand that. But don't cry over it. Look for solutions.
I don't even know where to go. Where do we go from here?
Well, I think animation is one of the things that's really, really important. One of the things I'd like to do with Miriam is I'd like to, there's a company here in, can I mention the company's name? Is that
Sure,
okay?
as long as you're okay with it.
No, I'm fine with it because I'm giving them a plug, I suppose, but they do fabulous work. They're called North Country Sheds. They're based in a little town called Smiths Falls.
All right. Oh, that's just outside Ottawa, right?
Yeah, it's not far.
North Country Sheds. Okay.
It's called North Country Sheds. They make these beautiful workshops that are unbelievable. They're like Amish style workshops with metal roof. They'll last at least 40 years. I've got a few of them, and some of them are over 40 years of age, and they're still very serviceable. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to put one in the backyard of Miriam's place, as well as a bunch of other properties.
Nice.
And create a live work condition, right? Where you could have, the yoga studio, or if you're a RMT, registered massage therapist, you're a physiotherapist, you're a hairstylist, you're running your nail bar, you're running a coaching practice, you're a realtor, whatever you have. And so North Country Sheds builds these things for under $20,000. They're like $40 a square foot. You can't build anything for $40 a square foot. We talked about it a moment ago. A concrete building, 40 stories high is $600 a square foot all in. $40 a square foot. All you have to do is put down a gravel pad. They charge $250 to deliver it. They've delivered as far as Thunder Bay, for goodness sake. I don't know if you know where Thunder Bay is, but
it's way up there.
Long way.
Even that's like 5 hours for you or more, isn't it?
Oh my God.
More. Sorry, Thunder Bay's on the list, like the list side of the lake.
It's
We're
the
almost
lake.
Winnipeg.
You might as well drive to Winnipeg. And they probably charge more than $250 to do that, but still, they are fantastic. And so, let's say you bought something for $20,000, and you put some, maybe a propane heater in there, added the electricity. You can rent that thing. You probably know that you can now put a workshop in your backyard that's 166 square feet. Right, without a building permit. So you could probably get a 166 square foot workshop, and you could probably rent that for probably $650 a month. So if we just multiply 650 times 12, you could probably get about $7,000 or $8,000 in revenues from a building that'll probably cost you, when you put the heat to it and electricity, probably cost you about $20,000 or $25,000, including the gravel base. And your cap rate would probably be something like about 20% on that. So that's that's an animation, right? And unfortunately, you asked, in my opinion, real estate is get rich slow. People always ask me, can you help me get rich fast, Bruce? And I always go, I'm so glad you asked me that, because the answer is no. Because if I knew that, I would do it for myself. Real estate is get rich slow. But one more thing I should add. About 10 years ago, when I got into this coaching practice, I did a little bit of research on the 100 richest families in Canada. And 61 out of 100 had all or substantially all of their wealth invested in real estate, almost 2/3. And they must know something. And, real estate has a number of different returns, which I'm sure everybody knows. You hope to make some cash flow returns. You hope that over time it will go up in value, and you hope that your tenants will help you pay your mortgage down. So you have 3 different types of returns. And the wealthiest people in Canada figured that out. They've been doing it in Europe for hundreds of years, in England for hundreds of years, in Asia and Japan for probably some of them a couple of thousand years. The Holy Roman Catholic Church has been doing it for at least 2,000 years.
Yeah, the golf course I was playing at last week. I won't name it because I don't think it's accurate. I haven't fact checked it, but I was told that the Weston family and Michael Eachin own it. And, and this is the last year it's in operation. It'll be a construction zone next year, starting this fall for houses.
Yeah, golf courses are an environmental nightmare. You have to put water to it. You have to cut the grass. You have to put insecticide, fungicides, fertilizer. They consume a lot of energy and resources, and they pollute our waterways. And plus, on top of that, I hate golf.
We're moving on.
I'm going to get some bad email now from all the golfers. One of my son-in-laws is a very good golfer. He's going to kill me if he hears this.
It's actually funny because just to continue on the golf vein for just a second, like you're a big hockey fan. Like a lot of hockey players enjoy hockey as well. Like there seems to be a lot of skill transfer between the two.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I played lots of hockey as a younger fellow, but I'm no good at golf. So really, that wasn't a very fair statement by me because I am really bad at it.
So sorry. Going back to the bunkie. Yeah, I'm on their website, and this sounds amazing.
They're fantastic.
And do you already have clients doing this, putting in
lots of
shops?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I can tell you that one of my favorite new business models is to buy some industrial land. And I've got, since you've got 4 screens there, Erwin, type up another one. Go to Long Yards, just the way it sounds, longyards.com. Hope I got that right.
It's thinking. Something broke.
Is it busted?
Yeah.
Oh no. Try longyards.ca.
Okay, let me try that.
Long LONG yards.ca. Should be able to see it.
You should probably buy the .com. There we go. I think you can afford the .com.
I think he does have the .com, but maybe something happened. I don't know. But anyway, this is a young client.
I'm here. Yeah, long yards more than storage.
Yeah. So let me explain the model. It's very simple. You buy a piece of industrial land, you cut it up into small yards, because every contractor needs a place to put his or her equipment, loaders, dozers, trucks, dumpers, whatever, right? You can't park you're going to share the screen? Oh, this is awesome. Yeah. I don't know if you can make that movie any bigger, but you can sort of see what's going on here. So these are small contractors who need a yard. And this is young Chris Long, who's the founder of Long Yards, right? His last name is Long, and this is one of his locations in Canada. He's got a few in the United States as well. So what you do is look, you want to play that one? How long is it? Oh, it's 1:41. We can play that one. Do you want to turn up the volume?
Yeah, I work on that.
Screened in yard, and they always know that their possessions
a little more
locked away. It just creates such a better environment for your business, knowing it's in a professional atmosphere, not at home.
So just turn up the volume a little bit on the left at the bottom. There you go. All the way up.
Mailboxes.
And started again.
Allowed many businesses here to scale and
For the listeners' benefit, I'll show the YouTube link in the show notes.
Contractor. I didn't have enough space in my house.
That's Chris.
Like a junkyard. I had 3 trailers, tools, equipment everywhere. The light bulb went off. Hey,
I think a lot of men and women can appreciate
we love to offer our
having
stuff
stuff.
level of service with a lit up facility, text open gate, cameras where you can watch everything all the time, a locked in, screened in yard, and they always know that their possessions are safely locked away. it just creates such a better environment for your business, knowing it's in a professional atmosphere, not at home. From offering loading docks, a small business community that helps each other, shared offices, mailboxes, and it's allowed many businesses here to scale and to seek growth. We're seeing this business expand everywhere through Canada and the States. Most of our colleagues with Long Yards are business-focused entrepreneurs, real estate investors. They know the cap rates, they know what's involved. You want to know that the money you're putting in is working for you. At Long Yards and with storage, that's what we do. We put your money to work, we get you a great return, and we're in control. We're seeing this business expand everywhere through Canada and the States. We could take vacant land that's sitting, not doing much, and turn it into income-producing land. You buy
Oh my God, I have a friend that will be interested in this.
With a good brand and a good marketing package, we can help your facility get filled up. You're quick to market. If you're interested in Long Yards as a partner or investor or looking at your own location, please reach out to us at info@longyards.com and we'd be happy to work with you.
All right, that was a... Chris owes me coming on the show for promoting this.
He does. Well, but I'll tell you Chris's backstory if that's okay, everyone.
Yeah.
I think your listeners and viewers will enjoy it. So Chris came to me when he was a young man. He was a carpenter making $18 an hour, and he was a single dad. He became a single parent when he was still, I think, a teenager, and he brought up a beautiful young daughter who's now, of course, well into her teen years. This is about a 10-acre industrial site in Ottawa, the one that you just showed. And I said, Chris, you're going to buy this. He said, I got no money. I said, well, okay, we'll figure it out. So it was a difficult time, and we're in a difficult time, but there's opportunity even when there's a recession, right? There is opportunity. So this particular 10-acre industrial site was owned by a couple of men from Syria, and they had some urgent needs. I suspect family needs. And so I went to them on behalf of Chris as his coach and as his realtor in this case as well. And I said, would you sell this to Chris and would you give him 90% financing? You know what seller take back finance is, right? I'm sure you're listener.
For listeners' benefit, the seller is providing the financing.
Yeah.
Like they are the bank in this case.
They are the bank. Because with Chris, making $18 an hour, it'd be hard to go and borrow $500,000 from a chartered bank. Right. So they agreed. They wanted to monetize their land. So I said, Chris, we got to find you about $50,000 worth of equity to buy this place. And he was doing some work for me on a bunch of fit ups. He was adding some micro suites and basement apartments and stuff like that for me. And I said, I'll just give you an advance on the work you're doing anyway. So he was able to put a little bit of capital together and close the deal. And then we borrowed from a private lender about $1.2 million or $1.3 million to put the gravel down, the fencing in, and all the technology that you saw there. And as fast as he could build those contractor yards, he could lease them up. Well, so by that time he had about 1.6 or 1.7 million invested in it, and we got it reappraised at 3.6 because the cash flow was so strong. So, he calls me up super excited. He said, Bruce, can you imagine me? Me, a millionaire. I said, yeah, I can. He said, well, there you go. And now he's living in Florida. He's remarried. He's got a bunch more kids, and he's building them all over the state. So it's a great success story. But what I was going to say is, like everything else, these business models change, right? That was the original model that Chris used, the contractor yards model. But now, and you saw in that video, there's sea cans there. And now there's going to be these workshops that I talked about at North Country Sheds, right? So you put them in there, you rent them to the people who have a yard. So now they have a little office, they have a sea can, they have a yard, they're good to go.
Sorry, Bruce, what's a sea can?
A sea container, right? Like you see them on the trucks. Sea container, they come across on the big ships.
Shipping containers, yeah.
And so they come in 20-footers or 40-footers. And you see them on the rail cars too. They're stacked too high.
Yeah. For listeners' benefit, we generally import way more than we export. So we got a lot of shipping containers in Canada.
We got a lot of shipping containers,
yeah. That's super cool. But even shipping containers, I think they're around like 4 to 6 thousand to buy, but that's like stock. There's nothing done to it. You still have
Yeah,
to.
yeah. I mean, well, a sea can, a shipping container, that's a good way to refer to it. You can get them if you buy them in bulk for 3 or 3,500. And
Oh,
there's a hell of a lot you can do with them, and you rent them to your clients and make a little bit more money. And we're going to do the same thing with the workshops.
this is amazing. And then
It's a
who's
great,
using the
great
workshops? These are small businesses or just people just
So,
wanting
so
a
let's
workshop,
say
like
let's say
build
you
their
were
model car or whatever.
yeah, let's say you were a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning guy. Okay,
hmm hmm
you've got all kinds of equipment and inventory. You got to store it in a yard. Again,
Oh
you
yeah,
can't you
yeah.
can't put your loader or your dozer or your dumper in your driveway in suburbia. The bylaw officer, the ordinance enforcement officer, be knocking on your door within a couple of days. Neighbors will complain. So you got to have it in a yard. And then you want to have some of your material out of the weather. You can rent a sea can, a shipping container, and you put material in there and keep it away from the weather.
hmm
The next thing you're going to ask is, gee, I need an office, right? I've got a couple of, maybe I've got an admin, I got a bookkeeper, I got an accounts receivable person. Where am I going to put those? So you have these little North Country sheds. You could just put on 166 square feet. If they have 60 square feet each, you can easily put 2 or 3 people in there. And if you buy some of the bigger ones that North Country Sheds has, you can probably have 4 or 5 staff in there. The other thing that we get asked for now a lot is, can I move a tiny home in there and live there as well?
Yeah, yeah. I was going to get to that. And
Well, the answer is so far no. As you know, cities everywhere are really bogged down by and constrained by some planning rules, which are obscurely difficult. And I've been, I do speeches all over the States and Canada, like I said, a few overseas. And I'm not the most popular guy in cities and towns because I recommend they burn their zoning codes. There was a study, not by me, but by the University of Chicago, that if the planning rules and the zoning rules were as relaxed as they were in 1965 and 2009, the US economy would be 40% bigger. That works out to 80,000 US dollars per family per year. That is an unimaginable increase in public welfare. Before we started this conversation on
mhm.
and recorded it, we were talking about Star Trek and unlimited energy and basically free money.
hmm
40%. It is extraordinary. 40% of all the buildings built in Manhattan could not be built today because of their zoning codes. I'm not saying that we should have people living next to an armaments plant because they blow up every once in a while, or next to an oil refinery because they light on fire every once in a while, or a fireworks factory. I get that, or an abattoir, or a chemical plant. Sometimes they leak and they would kill you. So there are very good reasons to have zoning rules, but not to prevent, like one of my daughters, she has literally a cabin in the woods, a tiny house. And right next to her, maybe 100 feet away, she has her workshop. She runs her own business, very successful fashion business. And she has a tiny house and she has a small workshop. Well, there's no reason why we can't have that.
Yeah, I don't really get it. It's just yeah. Well, I know why. It's NIMBYs don't like them, and they vote, and they're motivated. Wow, this is fascinating stuff. Do you know the owners of North Country Sheds as well?
I do.
Oh, I probably want to talk to them.
Listen, if any of your friends want to know more about this model, probably nobody knows this model better than I do. Reach out to me at any time. You've got my email address. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I'm
Okay.
on that pretty much 24/7. So they can reach out to me and I'll be happy to put them in touch with whomever they need.
Okay. Bruce, we do have a number of listeners. So I don't, do you want to share? Should we share your email, or should we just share your website?
No, share my email. That's fine. I get a lot of email, but I can handle that. What I can handle is I can't handle a lot of phone calls. When you have about 2,500 clients, if everybody called me once a day, you can imagine how much work I get done. So I ask people to either text me or even better, email me. So I don't mind sharing it. It's Bruce at brucemfirestone.com. So Bruce at Bruce M. You got to put the M in there. Bruce at brucemfirestone.com. That'll get to me. I mean, I love hearing from people. I hear from former students of mine from 20 years ago, many of them very successful. And it's just one of those things that it gives me a great joy, to be honest.
So Bruce, I want to go over this workshop garden shed strategy again. So this is what you're seeing people do successfully in in what area? All over North America?
Yeah, so all over North America, in many jurisdictions, not gated communities, Erwin, but in many jurisdictions, many cities and towns in the States and Canada, a home-based business is legal, right? So let's say I was a young mom and I had one kid and I had a workshop in the backyard. I could run a small daycare there, right? In Ontario, they changed the Planning Act to allow workshops or sheds in the backyard up to 166 square feet without a building permit. And if you're going to build something bigger, you need to go get a building permit. But you can do an awful lot with 166 square feet. And of course, like I said, if you need something that's 200 or 300 square feet, I've got some that are 850 square feet with a building permit, mind you. They are fantastic. So home-based businesses are legal in most jurisdictions. Again, if you live in a gated community or a condominium, they have a lot of rules. And so condominiums, you can't really animate them, or at least not very easily. And gated communities have homeowner associations, and they have a lot of rules. So a lot of the animation ideas that we've talked about on this call don't apply in those two circumstances. But for everybody else, they probably do.
And then, sorry, just get into the nitty gritty a little bit. Do these have washrooms?
So in the case of my daughter, for example, she's got a beautiful little tiny home. It's very small, but she's got the tiny home here and she's got her workshop here. The workshop has power, heat, and air conditioning, but it does not have it does not have water. And it does not have a bathroom, but the tiny house does. So if she has to go use the bathroom, she just walks. So that's why it's a live-work condition, and that's why it's a home-based business. You got the home here, and you've got your workshop or your backyard office or whatever. But you need to go to the bathroom. You go to your apartment or your house.
Right. So I remember you mentioned you had your early triplex example where you had the laneway garage, or you had the garage in the back.
It's quite a big one too.
So for these, I don't know what you call the strategy, the shed, the workshop shed strategy. Do you have a name for this strategy?
I just call it the live-work condition.
Live-work condition.
It is hugely popular, and like I said, and you already knew this, you can search MLS in the States and Canada and filter by for properties that already have backyard garages. And you could convert them into a coach house, a little backyard coach house, but it's very, very inexpensive to create the workshop. And a coach house is much more expensive, because you got to connect it to the water system and the sewer system. And, coach houses are not cheap. I'm just building one now on one of my properties, and it's like $330,000 for a 2-bedroom coach house.
Yeah, for us, that's I mentioned earlier that we're targeting houses with detached garages, 2-car, because we're able to do that we're able to do those conversions for like 110 to 130. Yeah,
well, that's very, very good. 110 to 130 is excellent. If you can do that'll pay for itself. But if you were to convert it to a workshop, it would be a lot less.
Yes, of course, and which is why. And this is the first time I've heard this strategy. Sort of. I've heard of this strategy for like pure storage, in terms of like offering just a storage shed to your tenants for maybe a few $100.
I like that strategy too, but the workshop is one step above. And like I said,
we're in between now. We're in between a tiny home and a garden suite and just storage shed.
If you have somebody like Maya who's running a very successful yoga studio, neighborhood studio in her backyard, and has an apartment, she's likely to stay quite a long time.
Well,
There's something else you need to know about that.
being in Ontario, a lot of people don't want their tenants to stay longer.
No, but there's something that you need to know. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
I have a legal opinion from a very well-respected lawyer
Yeah.
on my computer somewhere. When I did that lease for Maya, for
Yeah.
the studio in the apartment, we did it as a commercial lease for the backyard workshop with accessory residential. And I explained, wait a second, I explained to Maya, I said, Maya, this is a commercial lease. You are paying HST on this. And HST for a building owner is your best friend. But wait a second, it gets more interesting. If it's a commercial lease with accessory residential, it is not covered by the Residential Tenancy Act. And the reason for that is this is a carve out that the Planning Act, or the Residential Tenancy Act, has created. So let's say, Erwin, you and I owned a $300 million industrial building somewhere, and we had in it a site superintendent apartment so that he or she, they could look after a building. But then we find out our site superintendent is an alcoholic, drug-taking, fiasco. You can walk in there and escort him or them off the property in 5 minutes, because you can't have somebody who's dealing drugs or doing drugs looking after a $300 million asset. You just can't have that. So
it's unsafe for everybody.
It's not safe, and it's a bad idea. And it does happen. I've had that situation exactly happen to me on one of my properties. And because it was considered accessory residential, there's no overholding provision whatsoever. So I said, Maya, if you do not pay your rent, you will not have, it will not be a 4 to 6 month process and an N12 for you are going to be leaving. I'll give you 15 days. And she said, I understand. So I said, you've got to be really committed to this, because you don't want to be an entrepreneur unless you're really committed. And she was super committed, and she's been super successful. I think this year she'll break 130,000 in income. So there's some things that your listeners and viewers will have to learn, and they should get their own legal advice, because I'm just a lowly engineer.
Lowly engineer. Sorry, Bruce. I want to keep harping on this live work condition.
You're killing me.
I apologize. I just naturally need to learn things.
Well, one of the things I don't know you well. I've known you for a little over an hour, but I really respect the fact that you're drilling down and you're looking for the detail and you want to make things work. The people who are most successful in business, and you know this, Erwin, is somebody who finds a model, maybe this model, and they just repeat it. It's like making sausages. This. The people who make the least, and I'm guilty of this, make the least amount of money is you do whatever you want. Like I've been a hockey guy, I've been a university professor, I've been a real estate developer, a real estate coach. What the hell am I, right?
And a science fiction author, apparently.
Yeah,
not apparently, you are.
Oh, for sure.
Wait, Bruce, we're actually running out of time. Do we have time to talk about the book?
The first book was actually made into a short film, by the way.
No kidding.
Yeah. And then people have been asking me for the other book. I've written many books, over 80 of them, but one of the one I wrote about the Sens in the National Hockey League is called "Don't Back Down." They want to turn it into a TV series, but I said not until I die.
Oh yeah, you don't want to see it?
I don't. I'll leave that to my kids and grandkids to decide what to do with that.
That's too bad. A lot of sports stories have been making Netflix, and like the recent the Nike movie.
This was the same guys who did Letterkenny. I don't know if you know that series.
Fascinating. I'm pretty sure many Ottawa fans and hockey fans would like to see it. But yeah, okay. Sorry, just to go back to the live work condition. Do you have any examples you can share from like the Ottawa area, like what it costs to deliver it and what you're getting for rent for a workshop?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So my wife and I, we own something called the Barn Dominium.
Is there a website?
No.
Okay.
A lot of the stuff that I do, people say, do you have a website, a Facebook page, Instagram? I got nothing.
TikTok, Snapchat.
Just me and my smile. I built, it's got to be 25 years ago now. One of my friends, he's a developer, had this beautiful, beautiful Amish style barn, if you know what I mean. It's huge, ceiling height, 30 feet. It looks like a church in some ways. And it was just beautiful. And his name was John Galetta. He's now passed away. I said, John, because he was going to develop that site, what are you going to do with this barn? Oh, he said, I got these three young guys are going to come here with a hi-ho and knock it down. I said, what? Such a beautiful building. Yeah. I said, how much are you paying them to knock it down and take the stuff away? About $3,500. Oh, I said, how about I bring a crew down myself and I do it for free? He said, Bruce, are you crazy? I said, a lot of people think so. He said, you got a deal. So I went with my crew, but we didn't knock it down. What we did was we dismembered it and we lettered and numbered each piece, right? And I had a property about 12 or 13 kilometers away, beautiful property with a lake on it and all kinds of cool stuff. And so we laid down a concrete pad and we rebuilt this thing. And it was it's huge. It's like 4,500 square feet with a 30-foot ceiling height. And we had a large screen TV in there, and my kids, it was a playpen for my kids, basically. I had my summer office there, my cottage there. We own a lake, about 165 acres in total. So we had this beautiful barn and, large screen. We used to watch the Blue Jays and whatever. And the kids would have sleepovers for 35 friends, right? So it was fun. And we could have dances and parties in there. And one of my daughters got married in there. And but kids have a nasty habit of growing up. Damn. And they do. And so it sat empty for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, and kids weren't interested anymore. My oldest son's living in Australia with his family, and one daughter's in Toronto. I mean, they're all over the place. So I said to my, well, what the hell are we going to do with it? It's just sitting there empty. So we decided, this was before the pandemic began, based on, my own experience, that we would turn it into about 10 workshops. And that's what we did. And they range in size from 200 square feet, which is tiny, to 400 square feet, 800 square feet. I think the biggest one is 1,000. And oh my God, as fast as we could fit them up, people came and rented them. I mean, it was incredible. If I had 45,000 square feet instead of 4,500, and it's this most wonderful community. We got an old dude in there. He makes cigar box guitars. Do you know what the cigar box guitar is? He buys these cigar boxes. They're actual, and makes guitars. It's a thing. And they're beautiful. And oh my God, they sound beautiful. So he makes cigar box guitars. I've got a young fellow, his name's Abed. He makes and designs and builds his own kitchen cabinets and bathroom cabinets and installs them. Very successful. A woman in there who's a fashion designer. Another woman in there who makes handmade soaps and sells them to stores across Canada and the United States. I mean, I got a group in there that trains dogs. Actually, they train the owners, but anyway, they do dog training. I mean, we've just got a wonderful group, and a timber framer in there, a carpenter in there, and we just have a hobbyist in there who's just got more stuff than he knows what to do with. So the demand for these workshops was off the charts. And so for a 200 square foot, workshop, we get, I think, $600 a month. Plus a contribution to power, plus a contribution to cleaning. Parking is free because we get lots of land. So, that works out to, I don't know, $30 or $35 per square foot per year gross, plus a contribution to power. And we have in our lease, because we don't have them separately metered, but if one of them has maybe exceptionally has a lot of power needs, then we can change their rent. Now, the next thing that happened was, sure enough, a lot of these people asked whether they could, whether there's apartments nearby that they could rent, because it's a fabulous community. And unfortunately, there aren't any, but we have rolled a few tiny houses onto our property, and guess what we do? They because we got lots of land, 165 acres, they can live on the site and they don't pay much for that, but they roll their own tiny homes on the site if they have one, or they go buy one and they can roll it on our site. They can hook it up to our power and our septic system and our well. And I think they pay like $500 plus HST to park it. So that's kind of the model. It's very simple. And we just love it. I like visiting them because they're such neat people, and they run very successful businesses. Oh yeah, we've got a registered massage therapist there too. She does RMT work.
How many people do you think you have living on the property now?
Right now, so we've got 10 workshops, and I think 4 of them are currently living on site. And there's at least 1 or 2 more who would like to. So I might buy a couple of tiny. In fact, I actually contracted for a couple more tiny homes with a local company,
Okay.
small living company. So we might have 2 more this year.
Bruce had no idea the conversation would go here.
Whatever. I mean, Christian Spilvogel asked me to do it, and I was happy to do it. I mean, your reputation precedes you. You're an amazing individual.
Well, appreciated. You have way more stories than I do.
Well, I'm also about twice your age, so there you go.
Do you have extra time? I know we're over time. Do you have time?
Yeah, I do have something I have to do at 12:30, so I've got 8 more minutes or something like
Okay.
that. I've got a little bit of coaching. I coach a couple of guys in Long Beach, California, who, by the way, are doing this workshop model.
We might have to have you back, but I do want to ask you about you. So you've probably been exploring AI longer than pretty much anyone else in the real estate community.
Yeah.
Talk to me about AI.
So I
'Cause you wrote a book on it.
I wrote it. Wait a sec. I wrote a trilogy on it.
Okay.
It's called Quantum Entity, and Quantum Entity. There's a trilogy. The first book is We Are All One. The second book is American Spring, and the third book is I can't remember. That isn't the title. I can't remember. I just can't remember right now. Let's see. Well, oh yes, the third one's called The Successors. It's a trilogy, and it's about a young man. Looks a lot like you, actually. He lives in Toronto, and he's a brilliant mind. He's a physicist, and
That's where the comparisons end. Yeah.
well, he's very handsome, and he's a neat kid. In my mind, he does look a lot like you, like the character I had in mind. I mean, I'm watching him on the screen here. So yeah, he takes what's called the iPhone 40. This was written 10 years ago, right? So he takes the iPhone 40 and he hacks them, and he adds something to them, which is a bit of a surprise. And so what happens is you get your brand new iPhone 40 from Quantum Computing Corp. That's his company, QCC, Quantum Computing Corp. And the moment you boot it up, this kind of apparition shows up out of the phone. It's sort of like what Mark Zuckerberg was talking about with the metaverse, but it just sort of pops out of the phone. And if you know what a familiar is an animal that becomes very close to a witch or a warlock. Well, in this case, the quantum entity sort of pops out of the phone in 3D and bonds with you. And, initially they're very primitive creatures, but they learn about, Erwin, or they learn about Bruce or Mary or Betty or whatever. And they become your familiar. They become like your alter ego. When you go to sleep, they can work on your income tax, right? When they go to sleep, they can be editing one of your videos. They're quantum computing. And as soon as this happens, he starts to take them to the next level. They become quantum phones. And the one thing that he's basing his theory on, which is a valid theory in physics, is that when you create 2 particles that are related, no matter how far apart they get, they are still communicating with each other. So you could have a quantum phone here and a quantum phone on Mars, and there would be no time delay between the 2 of them, right? And unlike some people like Elon Musk, who believes that AI could be the end of humanity, and it might be, these quantum entities, the question will become, in the first book, the question is, at what point does an artificially intelligent creature have human rights, right? And there's a whole chapter in the book where this question is brought before the Supreme Court of the United States. And, have these quantum entities developed intelligence? Are they conscious? And should they be protected entities by the U.S. Constitution, or for that matter, the Canadian Constitution, and should they have rights, human rights? And it's my belief that we will see intelligent creatures. They will be mechanical of sorts, and that they will sleep, they will dream, they will fall in love, because the only way to know you're conscious or in love is to be conscious or in love, right? That is the only way. We have no other definition that makes any sense. I think, therefore I am. That is the only definition of consciousness that makes any sense. The Turing test is fine, but it doesn't go far enough. The other way to determine consciousness is, Erwin, when you ask yourself a question, just when you're sitting there thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to have to eat tonight? Is there a voice inside your head that answers you? The answer is yes. That's consciousness. And I think we will see quantum computing at some point, and we will see artificially intelligent agents, basically, that will exhibit all of the symptoms, if you will, of consciousness, and may, from that, dream and, like I said, sleep and fall in love. And these quantum entities that are in your phone, your iPhone 40, there is a lot of affection between you and your QE. And that's kind of the beginning of the story.
It's crazy. We're going back to Star Trek Next Generation. We know that they'll legally be people, because Lieutenant Commander Data was ruled as people, or alive, conscious.
I love Data. I do. He was my favorite character in that. And I remember fondly him saying, I don't remember who it was. I think Commander Riker comes in and he looks at Data, and Data is pouring water, measuring it very carefully into a flask, and then boiling it, and then doing it again. And Commander Riker says to Data, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm testing this theory that the watch pot never boils. But no matter whether I look at it or not, it is boiling in exactly the same time. My internal chronometer tells me that. And Commander Riker then says, turn off your internal chronometer and try it again. That Riker understood, or the writers understood, that is the beginning of consciousness and the ability to go beyond pure, binary code.
Are you afraid of AI, or is locus control? I spoke to another gentleman. He said locus control is not within me, so I'm not stressing about it.
So, speaking personally, anything can be used in a negative manner, right? I mean, fire, humans' mastery of fire was very, very, very important. But fire was also the precursor of all of our metallurgy. Metallurgy led to many things, including guns and cannons, and many other things, and fighter jets that bomb people.
Yeah. Implements of war, yeah.
And it's been used in warfare for a very long time. But I would rather have mastery of fire than be freezing in a cave somewhere in France.
Mm-hmm.
So I think AI could be used for very, very nefarious purposes. For example, when this quantum era begins, all passwords are useless. I mean, my QE could read your bank account while we're doing this. Now, QEs have, one thing that Damien Bell, who's the young physicist I mentioned, one thing that Damien did with his QEs is he tried to give them a sense of, like the Isaac Asimov rules, right? Do no harm, basically.
I like Elon's idea, make the robot weak enough that a human can overpower it.
That's probably a good idea.
Bruce, thanks so much for doing this.
I really enjoyed it. And will you give me a link at some point?
Oh, yeah. When we release, yes, we'll send you all the details.
Please do it. Thank you for everything you've done today. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to invest in real estate from scratch, my team teaches beginners how to use the #1 investment strategy that I personally use in a virtual free training class every month. Go to investortraining.ca/YouTube to register for our next class. The link is also in the description as well. I publish at least 2 to 3 videos a week here, so subscribe if you want to keep learning from seasoned investors like myself and my guests. And if you're just starting out, feel free to ask questions and comment below, and I do the best to answer each of those comments and questions myself. Again, if you're ready to learn the nitty-gritty about real estate investing from a professional investor, register for our next virtual class. That's at investortraining.ca/YouTube. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next video.